Really weird that a guy would just be dead in the middle of the street.
A young rapper found shot in an affluent suburb.
Honestly, I don't know anybody that don't want to hurt Joe.
JoJo, he was a really good dad. He didn't have the finances, but he had the love.
Rich or poor, we're gonna do everything we can, but it's gonna be a challenge.
Is there a suspect? 10-4 now.
I know where she could be.
She was an eyewitness to the homicide. I was expecting the defense cross-examination to be intense.
I feel it's truly possible that she was actually the one who pulled the trigger.
If he can destroy her, he can raise a doubt in the minds of the jury.
For those most affected by a homicide, the first 48 is just the beginning. This is the story of the fight for justice. In the weeks, months, and years, a driver finds a man lying face down on the side of the road. First responders are too late to save him and suspect foul play.
Gulf Police at South Toledo Avenue. We got about a 30-year-old male. He's all bloody. All right, what is that way?
There's all kinds of strange reason that these murders have happened that I've been a part of. And the vast majority of them were just so senseless.
This is an odd place.
This is a real nice neighborhood down in South Tulsa. It's really weird that a guy would just be dead in the middle of the street. Why is he in this neighborhood?
Don't have my deed yet. On some of these cases, there's something that sticks with you.
You get there to the scene, it's a predominantly white neighborhood, and you've got a black male laying in the middle of the street. You just kind of scratch your head and say, what's going on?
Was there anything in there? Like a bullet stuck under the skin?
The man was shot once in the neck.
If it's the guy walking and he gets shot, there should be a casing somewhere in this general area.
I have not seen a casing.
The thing that I was hopeful for was getting witnesses. There was the 911 caller who saw the body in the road, so we had someone to talk to there.
So I was driving back to my house. I saw his body laying on the side of the road, face down.
What time did you leave the house?
Like 9:50.
And everything was fine then?
Yeah. I think it was like 10:40 when I drove.
Okay. Have you ever seen him before in the neighborhood?
I've seen him before.
John talked to someone who said they left at 10:05 and he wasn't here.
So we have a time frame of when it happened. 10:05 to 10:40. That's a pretty short time window.
None of the neighbors had seen anything or heard anything. So the biggest thing that we hope to find at that point is neighbors that have video cameras.
2 hours in.
How you doing, sir? You don't have cameras, do you?
We do, but it's not pointed towards the street.
One of the houses, they have a video that points right out here.
That guy, he's got a ring camera.
We did get video from multiple locations.
But we had nothing solid. I mean, there's no identification on this individual.
Our fingerprint people are going back to the lab to hopefully get an ID on him, so we're all going to head to the office and wait for that.
This is definitely an odd one. Ronnie's got his work cut out for him for sure.
It's going to be a challenge to solve the case.
5 hours in.
This is freaking good video.
I was really optimistic because the body's found literally catty corner from this house.
So we're into 39 minutes here, and I've yet to see this guy walk by. So there is a white car that passes by here. Right there, there it is. There's the white car right there.
It drives toward the crime scene, 9 minutes before the 911 call.
I gotta know you two.
So the white car be going this way, north. Here we go. Like slowing down right in front of where the body was.
You see brake lights coming on right in the area where our victim was. They are stopping for a reason. That caught my attention. I'm like, okay, we need to find out more about this.
You can't tell that there's a body in the road right there, right?
Not with that video.
It was a little disappointing that from the angle of the camera, we're not going to be able to see if he's thrown out of that car. What's the tag on it?
There's no tag right on it. What is that, boys?
Toyota?
Blacked out wheels.
It's newer.
That's it. That's a Corolla. The big mouth of it right there.
We had narrowed it down from there's a body in the street we don't know anything about to there's a newer white Toyota Corolla that we need to find. So that's encouraging.
8 hours in,
The lab technicians identified our victim.
Joseph Brown's his name.
29-year-old Joseph Brown was raised in Tulsa. An aspiring hip-hop artist, he was a son, a brother, and the father of 2 young boys.
Joseph Brown, dude. Joe Solo. I'm standing out there looking at this guy as, hey, man, that guy looks familiar. She's on his associates.
2 months ago, Detective Brown was seeking information from Joe and his girlfriend in another case, one he's still investigating.
Joe and his girlfriend were living on the streets. They were in the drug community, that world.
Okay, maybe he's crossed the wrong person, or maybe there's some type of drug debt that hasn't been paid, rich or poor. We're going to do everything we can to solve the case.
Is there a possibility she could know something about the individual that killed him? I mean, there's a possibility.
So right now, all we have to go on is this girlfriend and the white car.
For the next 22 hours, it's a 2-pronged search for their only possible leads.
We send the information out to all the officers. There's 700-800 cops in Tulsa. Wrong kind of wheels.
We have split up sides of town, and everybody's taken like 1/4 of the city.
There's not a lot of white Toyota Corollas until you start looking for a white Toyota Corolla, and they are everywhere.
Not feeling it. No, it's not it.
We got an address for the victim's family, so Mark and I are going to go up to the mom's house and tell her the unfortunate news. I've always made a point to do a next of kin notification. It's the right thing to do. No matter what's going on in that victim's life at the time, there's still people who care for them and love them, and their families shouldn't be the ones suffering.
That's little Joe. Say hi.
JoJo, he was a really good dad. He didn't have the finances, but he had the love. He wanted to definitely make a career out of rapping.
He rapped about life, about growing up and things like that.
Got your solo on there?
Yeah.
Solo means stepping over life's obstacles. He was just telling you about his struggle, his daily struggle, what he was going through, what he wanted people to know about him.
The underline of all of his raps had that in it, the struggles that he was going through, being homeless and stuff like that. I love hearing his voice.
He was nice with it. His flow was... It was different. It was like a river, you know? It just kept going.
If he would have had enough time, ain't no telling what he could have did.
family is really suspicious of the on-again, off-again girlfriend of him that we're actively looking for. They were telling me that he's had some issues with her.
Just flags down. She was just like, I heard you guys are looking for me. 5 days into the investigation,
Joe Solo's girlfriend, she's been found, and she agrees to come down to Detective Division and talk to us.
The girlfriend could have been involved in it, but until we get a story from her, we don't know. Any idea of why you're down here?
Excuse me, my baby daddy's dead, right? We were together, but we argued a lot. So he'd leave a lot.
So who's he been with?
I don't know, he don't tell me.
Would he get a ride from people?
If it was like a complete stranger, nah. Hell no. But if he hop in the car with homie.
Which obviously leads you to believe Joe was in the car with somebody he trusted. So when was the last time you saw Joe?
It had to be like Monday, Tuesday.
2 days before he was found dead.
We fought from the moment he woke up. You know, he was on his little attitude because he didn't have no drugs.
What kind of drugs?
His main drug was meth. He wanted to fit in.
What did you hear happened to Joe?
She says friends of his from the street told her.
They just told me he was dead. They're saying I did this.
Why does everybody think you did it?
Everybody think I did it.
Why is that?
Because the police are going door to door looking for me. And I'm just like, I don't know what happened. Why I did this?
I would love for her to come in and say, yeah, here's what happened, here's why it happened, but that wasn't the case.
So who would want to hurt Joe?
Honestly, I don't know anybody that don't want to hurt Joe.
I mean, obviously somebody did.
I love the out of Joe.
We're sorry for your loss. You know, for us, it's every day, but, you know, for you, this is tragic.
I tried to tell him.
What do you mean you tried to tell him?
The streets wasn't no good for him.
Hang tight, young lady, we'll get you out of here. I didn't have any reason to doubt her story. I thought she was truthful.
Then
911, police, fire, medical. Police?
6 days after Joe's death,
My son is driving like 100 miles an hour, and I feel like he's gonna crash into someone's house or somebody or kill himself.
He's just doing circles around that block.
Yeah, he did too. I haven't seen him come back around yet.
Okay, we'll send someone out, okay?
but as police approach, he speeds away.
I think I just saw him on my way here. He had a paper tag.
The officer questions the young man's mother.
And he took off on me. He about wrecked into some cars, so for us, that's too damn dangerous. I'm not pursuing him in this traffic.
He said he was gonna run into my garage.
Is he high or?
Yes.
Meth? What is his name?
His name is Braden.
And his last name?
BLOUGH.
It definitely helps that you have parents willing to talk to us that are involved in their kid's life, whether it's good or bad. But mom says that she does not have control on him, and he's just going out and doing whatever he wants to do.
So it's a white Corolla.
Mm-hmm.
What year do you think that was?
It's a 2021.
And the black wheels?
Yeah, they're black.
Possible lead on the Toyota. Officer Riley got a white Corolla, and the guy ran from him. It was something that just piqued my interest. The Toyota that we were looking for, the rims were black, and that jumped out to us. John and I are gonna head downtown.
Braden Blau is the owner of the white Toyota. He has nothing really on file with us at all.
He is 20 years old, a father with no prior convictions. Braden Blau grew up in Colorado Springs, where he worked at his parents' crane repair company.
And I ended up finding his Facebook page. He's wearing all red, throwing down gang signs. He's gotten into drugs and dealing with some people he shouldn't be dealing with.
Braden's family lives in a nice neighborhood. They're well off. Joseph's family isn't. So we need to figure out the connection between the two. How is this kid linked to Joe Solo?
I believe it would be dope related.
There's a ton of people in Tulsa who are involved in the drug game, so just because he is and he is doesn't mean they got together and there was whatever happened that one of them ends up dead. There's all these pieces we're gonna have to still connect. The more information we're getting about Braden and his vehicle, it's like, okay, yeah, there's something to this. There's a lot of people out moving and shaking right now trying to find the car.
Seven days in,
this looks pretty good over here.
Looks like there's a car in the backyard that the guys have found.
We find an abandoned Toyota, also in a nice neighborhood.
It's a half mile from where Braden was driving recklessly.
There's stains there, stains on the front seats. But I don't know if they've cleaned them or...
Now it's just to figure out if those stains in there are Joe Solo's blood.
Maybe this is the car that we need to find. So I was happy with that. So we're gonna do a search warrant for it and have crime scene process it. Right now, we don't have any idea where Braden is. If he is involved in this, we wanna find him so we can hear what he knows about it. And so now we can start digging into that. And that's what we started doing.
Definitely looks like some cleanup's been done.
Whose is it? Braden's?
They find Braden's passport in the trunk.
We had that information about the car and the driver, but there's still a lot we have to do before we're putting handcuffs on somebody.
Across town, the team is conducting surveillance at the address Braden's mother provided.
Max and Rob went and talked to a guy leaving Braden's apartment complex. He tells them he saw him last night in another white Toyota.
So as it turns out, he went and found another white Toyota Corolla. It was a leased vehicle that he did not return in a timely manner. They reported it stolen.
At that point, now we've got enough where we can arrest him. Not for the murder, but having possession of this stolen car.
An hour later, outside Braden's apartment.
All right, coming to the gate now. Stolen car? Yep.
Braden shows up in this other Corolla. It looks just like his, and so, like, okay, this is getting even more weird. What's going on here?
We will need somebody to get around on the north side. Is there a suspect? 10-4 now.
Seven days after Joe's death.
All white male, shaggy hair, skinny, scribbled chin, beard. Be able to block it in. Our suspect.
We're in a great place at that point. Braden has been arrested without any incident. There's also people that were with him or in his apartment, all roughly his age, late teens, early 20s.
They were taken to headquarters for questioning.
We're gonna want as much information as we can about him, so that's why we're gonna focus on talking to them. Hey, I'm gonna need you to set up and talk so I can see you and everything, okay? Take a deep breath.
This stress is like...
We just want to hear what you got to say and how you end up down here.
I was getting ready to leave out the house, and Brady said,
to come outside with him real quick.
You called him some Brady guy, I think's what you called him.
Yeah, Brady, Brandon. I don't even know his real name.
Tell me what you know about him.
I know what this is about.
Okay, well, tell me.
I can't be putting my name down on paper or anything.
Okay, man, I'm not gonna sit here and play games with you. He's got information I need, and me just giving him an open-ended question of tell me what you know wasn't working. So I'm gonna do whatever I need to do, change my tactics talking to him to get that information. What do you know about Brady and his car and whatever else?
Brady has been in a bunch of deep.
I want to know what the deep Brady's been in.
Fucking killing.
What do you know about any killing?
That's really what it. Why can't you guys just be straight up? You guys don't have to like fish scale me or anything.
I'm not fish scaling you, okay? You're the one who's trying to drag this out. I can't just
tell you that did it.
How involved is this guy? Is that why he's not wanting to be completely open with us? How do you know that, and what do you know?
Because he came home crying and everything. And I was like, bro, don't tell me, I don't need to know.
But what did he tell you that you didn't need to know?
Tell him it's about me after I tell y'all. But he said he killed this one and threw him out in the car.
At that point, it's just ratcheted up a whole other level. Okay. So who did he tell you the dude was that he killed?
He was black, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know that female that you guys detained today? She was with him.
She was with Brady when he killed this black guy. Okay. The information we get from the guy is obviously huge. Now we need to go talk to her and find out what she's got to say. My name's Ronnie.
I'm Max. So I'm just gonna let you go into details of what happened Wednesday, what might be interest of the police.
Just want the truth, but I don't necessarily want to throw everything at her at first.
I got picked up by Brady, and he had that dude in the back of the car with him, the black dude.
Okay. What kind of car did you get picked up in?
White car. It's the same car since I've known him.
Had you ever seen this black male before?
No.
You know how they met?
Brady told me that they have like just met 24 hours ago. Said that they met somewhere in.
She talks about some drug connection with Joe and Braden. Somebody's buying from the other, or they went in together to buy something.
There's no boundaries for drugs. I mean, whether it is you're poor and have drug habits or you're rich and have drug habits, there's no boundaries.
They were talking, chatted up, and then he got in the car.
Where do you guys go from there?
We went to the park. So, and then in the middle of the fun, like, he starts driving. But we were in the same way, so it's never good. The black dude, he was sitting there freestyling, you know what I mean? Brady, like, says something, like, are you talking about me? Like, so the black dude, he was like, no, I'm just freestyling.
So did Brady think he'd been disrespected by the black man?
That's how he felt, but then it was all cool after that. Dude's still rapping over the music I was playing. Braden's driving, and just out of nowhere, he starts the car, and then he was shut down. I did not observe this at all. And old dude was sitting there trying for his front, and just out of nowhere, all that happened.
You scratch your head and you sit there and think, what the heck? It was over something as stupid as rapping.
It was only one song, I'm pretty sure.
So tell us about what happens then.
I opened the back door. Brady didn't even get out of the car. He just stayed in there, and he was looking at me and pointing the gun at me, saying, get him out of the car. And he slumps right over on the ground. And I get back in the front seat, and he drives off.
His name was Joseph.
Oh.
She starts crying and she gets emotional, like she was reliving what she had been through. But I'm glad that she did the right thing and told us what happened.
We're 100% sure we had the right guy. The interview with Braden was just to be able to say, hey, here's your chance to say why things went sideways.
I want to get a confession from him, so I'm thinking there's no point in beating around the bush. And Braden, I'm just going to cut straight to the chase with you, okay? We're homicide detectives. There's somebody who has been killed, and the information we have is that you're involved in that. So I want to give you a chance to explain why your name has been brought up in this homicide investigation.
My name?
Your name.
I think you got the wrong person. I was in a car.
Okay, that car that you were in was stolen, so how did you get the car?
I didn't get the car.
How did you get it today, or how did you end up in it today?
You got in it to smoke a cigarette.
Whose is it?
I have no clue, sir.
He's obviously lying about that. Just the way he was talking was frustrating.
I'm the one that killed him?
Yeah.
You're gonna tell me what I did?
Yep, I am.
Is this a... whatever.
I think you were getting ready to say, is this a joke? And no, it's not a joke. Someone's dead. You're gonna go to jail for killing them when we get done here, okay? The interview didn't go real well. Didn't like how he was acting. I didn't like anything about how he was handling the situation.
Some folks will deny things until the day they die, and that's pretty much the way Braden was.
Okay.
You let me know what happened. Because I'll plead the fifth because I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
I don't know.
What happened to your car, your white car?
It's been gone.
I'm not gonna do this all day, John, so.
I don't blame you.
Hop up and turn around, man. If I had thought that I would eventually get something out of him, I would have sat in there for hours. But this kid's not gonna say anything. Put your hands behind your back, just relax. We had plenty to arrest him for. Have your seat right there, man.
What the f? This is my life. This is my freedom that you're all playing with. Never been arrested in Tulsa or nothing. I don't know if you guys are like dirty or what.
You're being arrested for murder, okay? There's enough evidence that we have to put together a case.
I don't know if it was all drug-induced or just him believing that, hey, I can beat this down the road.
This is my freedom, man.
I know,
You know what I'm saying?
And that was the other dude's life.
This is insane, bro. What the?
Joe's family has been just devastated by this. It's even people who have had issues either with drug addiction, homelessness, there's still people out there who care for them. Their life still has value, and it's no different with Joe. Once Braden's arrested, the biggest issue we're gonna have is getting these witnesses to cooperate. But that's out of my hands at this point. It's gonna be on the DA's office and their investigators. It's gonna be a challenge, that's for sure.
Four months after Braden's arrest.
It was a fairly complicated case. A lot of moving parts to it. And so then you're looking for forensics. I didn't want to hand that off to somebody, so I just thought I'm going to handle that and we'll get justice done.
But one of the major weaknesses of the case was when we got the labs back from the stain that was in Braden Blau's car, it did not test positive for blood.
We're not going to have DNA. We're not going to have fingerprints. When you first look at a case like this, you're thinking, well, great, I've got an eyewitness.
The forensic passenger witness, her testimony was so key because she was an eyewitness to the homicide.
We really got to focus on making sure she is cooperative, but she has been living on the streets. So it's been very rough. We got to make sure we keep tabs on her. And so there's a big concern. And if I don't have her, I don't know how I'm going to prove this case.
Being the victim advocate, we help with making sure that the witnesses are there for any court hearing.
The prosecution has 17 months to prepare for the trial of Braden Blau.
The female witness in the passenger seat, I'll never forget her. She was very difficult to track down, and at the time was living on the street, and that was all we knew. We had the investigators out looking for her.
And she felt like, wow, this is a really critical witness, and I got to make sure I can get her on the stand. If she doesn't deliver, then we're going to have problems.
We did not know if we were going to be able to have her at trial. And so at this point, I was kind of working on our backup plan. When Braden was arrested at his apartment, there was another mail that was picked up.
Braden basically was bragging to him about what he had done.
He had told the police that Braden had told him that he had killed somebody.
She came home crying and everything. And I was like, bro, don't tell me, I don't need to know.
That's exactly how a conversation would go, is bro, don't talk. Don't be telling me this stuff. Jurors are going to believe that.
Who did he tell you the dude was that he killed? He was black, right? Yeah.
Pretty important piece of evidence. Really important, right? I mean, every race on the planet, and he's able to point out that came in from the mouth of Braden Blau, describing a black person as being the victim. I thought, man, if that jury hears this guy say that's what Braden said about what happened in that car, that would be the nail in the coffin for Mr. Blau. So he was critical to try and locate.
Without his physical presence at the trial, everything that he had told the detectives could not be used. But that individual was from Colorado.
I'm trying to get people up in Colorado to find this guy. Unfortunately, never were able to find that person.
And so we were not going to be able to use that confession that Braden had told his buddy. It was very frustrating.
But then we were very lucky.
5 months before the trial,
the homicide detectives were still looking at the car itself. And fortunately for us, Toyota has a system called Toyota Connect that tracks that car's movement.
This is the neighborhood where Joseph Brown's body was left, and this red dot is where the body was found. Braden's car was pinging his location every 3 seconds, and so there is a dot for every 3 seconds when the car moves. Where these dots are getting closer and closer together, he was slowing down, and where the dark green dot is, that is where the car stopped. Then where these dots are getting farther apart, he sped away. So he significantly increased his speed after this stop. There's no explanation for that other than you are trying to get away from this spot as fast as possible, which is consistent with dumping a body right there. This information was invaluable for corroborating the female passenger's testimony.
If they can find her in the next 2 weeks before trial.
We had learned that the female passenger had had a baby, so we were feeling great about this because we thought that that would help us be able to find her.
The state had to get involved with her baby. We thought she would have a caseworker, she'd have an attorney, she'd be involved in the court process, but no, it didn't play out that way.
The state took the child, and she was at her father's and left there.
Our female passenger was on the run, and we're desperate.
Steve and I were both very stressed. Pretty much every day we were checking in to be like, did you hear something?
We're beating the bushes to try and locate our female passenger.
After 2 days of searching,
one of the individuals on the Fugitive Warrants Task Force who had dealt with her previously ended up being able to find her, got her arrested on the material witness warrant, and she was held in the juvenile center in Tulsa County until the time of the trial.
21 months after Joseph Brown's death.
Joseph Brown's family was there, and Braden Blau's family was there as well. The family members are all nervous.
As a prosecutor, it's high stakes time. I need that live witness on the stand so I have a jury that's going to be believing my case.
Braden has maintained his innocence from the very first time that I've met him. I want to show that my client isn't this murderer. He's not this scary guy. He's just a person like you and I. who has been charged with a crime not necessarily mean he's guilty of that crime.
The prosecution's star witness takes the stand.
I'm putting that front seat passenger on, and since she's being held in detention, she shows up wearing orange.
You never want your key witnesses to be in any sort of inmate outfit. Most jurors associate a witness in handcuffs as being less truthful or criminal.
But she did wonderful. She got on the stand and she pointed Braden out. She said exactly what he did. She said exactly what happened.
But now, I was expecting the defense's cross-examination of the front seat passenger to be intense.
If he can destroy her, he can raise a doubt in the minds of the jury. He's going to try and basically attack our star witness.
My concern was for the defense attacking the front seat passenger and hurting her credibility by pointing the finger at her.
I really made a point to bring out her callousness and how unsympathetic she was to this. It didn't bother her, she didn't care. Only someone that pulled a trigger herself would act that way.
He's trying to pin the shooting on her.
I feel it's truly possible that she was actually the one who pulled the trigger from that front passenger seat.
The medical examiner came in and testified about the injury to Joseph.
I performed the autopsy examination on Mr. Brown. The gunshot entrance wound was in the right front of the decedent's neck, injuring the cervical vertebrae, left vertebral artery, and spinal cord.
Which is more consistent with a passenger reaching around and pulling a trigger. You got passenger witness up here in the first end. And then she says that directly behind her is Joseph Brown, the victim in this case. Based off her testimony, allegedly, he turns around and shoots, and the trajectory should have entered somewhere around the left side of Joseph Brown's neck. Well, what we know from the medical examiner's testimony is actually that the bullet entered over here on the right side.
If Mr. Brown was facing directly forward and looking out the windshield, I would expect the shot to have come from straight forward or slightly from the right. It would have been very difficult for the shot to come from the driver.
It makes more sense for this person in front that could easily turn around, put their arm over and shot. It would have linked up directly to where that person was sitting. I felt very good about our case at that point.
He made good points with the medical examiner. If Joseph was sitting like the way a normal person would sit in the backseat of a car, the angle would not have made a lot of sense.
And that's when Angie kind of spoke up, the thing that was like, that's what we're going to argue. You remember that?
Yes, yes. There was no way with his size that he's going to get in a little tiny car and sit facing forward.
That totally made sense.
There's no way you would be able to sit normal.
Joseph Brown was over 6 feet tall.
Any guy who's got long legs is going to turn his body ever so slightly and put his feet across that center little hump in the back.
Once you kind of explain to them how that angle happened, what makes the most sense is he was sitting with his legs to the side and that the driver is the one that shot him.
Braden Blau's fate now rests in the hands of the jury.
They deliberated for 6 to 7 hours.
I was extremely hopeful because they were out so long that we were going to come back with an acquittal.
If the jury is deliberating longer, in my experience, it is bad for the prosecution. So I was starting to get worried.
On the charges of possession of a stolen vehicle and first-degree murder, Braden Blau is found guilty.
For Joseph Brown's mom, it was very emotional for her to sit through the entire trial and to have the jury come back and kind of give her that justice. I think that was very meaningful.
Braden coming from a fairly affluent family and has opportunities that most people would dream of. And Joseph, who's come from a background where he's had to struggle for everything. But ultimately, the truth came out about what happened to Joseph. And Braden Blau got exactly what he deserved.
Celebrating my brother's memorial, celebrating my brother's life and not his death.
He had a ball with life, and people had a ball with him. The young man didn't have to do that. All he had to do was just tell him, get out the car. JoJo didn't deserve that. What we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to get these other kids together and stop that senseless violence. Teach them while they little so they won't go astray. So, in the name of Mr. JoJo,
Colorado 1992. Cold case. Solved buried evidence. Reveals chilling truth. The first thing investigators noticed was not the body. It was the silence. At 5:17 on a freezing October morning in 1992, the small Colorado mountain community of Red Creek woke beneath a blanket of fog so thick that headlights disappeared only a few yards beyond the road. A logging truck had stopped near an abandoned service trail after the driver spotted something half buried beneath loose earth beside the tree line. At first, he thought it was an old coat. Then he saw the hand. By sunrise, deputies had sealed off the entire area. The victim was 24-year-old Claire Morgan, a local waitress who had vanished 11 days earlier after finishing a late shift at the Blue Lantern Diner. Her car had been found the following morning less than 2 miles away, parked beside an overlook above the Arkansas River. The driver's door was unlocked. Her purse was inside. Her keys were still in the ignition. One shoe was lying beneath the passenger seat. There had been no blood, no broken glass, no obvious struggle. For 11 days, investigators searched ravines, abandoned cabins, riverbanks, mountain roads, and miles of forest. Volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder through the darkness carrying flashlights. Claire's photograph appeared on television screens across Colorado. Posters covered gas stations and grocery stores. Her family waited beside a telephone that never seemed to ring. Then the body appeared, and suddenly the disappearance became a homicide. The condition of the remains made identification difficult, but dental records confirmed what Claire's family had feared. She had been buried shallowly, wrapped in an old gray canvas tarp and covered with stones, branches, and wet soil. Whoever had placed her there had not expected the ground to be disturbed so quickly. But there was something stranger. The burial site was almost 4 miles from where Claire's car had been discovered. That meant someone had transported her. Someone had known the mountain. Someone had chosen a place hidden enough to remain undiscovered. And someone had left behind almost nothing. The original investigation moved fast. Detectives interviewed Claire's coworkers, friends, former boyfriends, neighbors, and dozens of residents. One name appeared repeatedly: Daniel Voss, 31 years old, a mechanic, recently divorced, and one of the last people known to have spoken with Claire. Voss admitted seeing her the night she disappeared. He claimed he had stopped at the Blue Lantern for coffee around 11:40 p.m. He said, Claire appeared tired but normal. According to him, they exchanged a few words. He left alone. His story sounded plausible, until investigators learned that his truck had been seen near the overlook shortly after midnight. Voss denied it. He said he had driven home directly from the diner. Police searched his truck. Nothing. They searched his garage. Nothing. They collected clothing, tools, photographs, and personal records. Still nothing. The case began to fracture. A witness reported seeing a dark pickup near the mountain road. Another claimed she heard a woman's voice near the overlook. A third said Claire had mentioned being afraid of someone during the week before her disappearance, but every lead collapsed. The forensic technology of 1992 offered few answers. There was no modern genetic genealogy, no widespread surveillance network, no smartphones recording locations, no digital trail showing where a person's vehicle had traveled. There was only physical evidence, and physical evidence can disappear. The tarp contained fibers, but the laboratory could not determine their origin. Soil recovered from Claire's clothing appeared similar to soil from several locations in the county. A partial boot impression was discovered near the burial site, but rain had destroyed most of the pattern. The most promising clue was a small metal fragment found beneath Claire's fingernail. It looked like paint. Blue paint. Investigators compared it against Voss's truck. The truck was dark green. The fragment did not match. The investigation widened. Months became years. The Blue Lantern changed owners. The overlook was renovated. The old service road was eventually closed. Claire Morgan's name faded from newspapers. The case became one of those stories people in Red Creek mentioned quietly when winter arrived. Then, in 1998, Voss moved away. In 2003, Claire's mother died without knowing who had killed her daughter. In 2010, the original lead detective retired. And in 2017, the homicide file was transferred to a newly formed cold case unit. Detective Mara Ellison opened the box for the first time on a rainy Monday morning. Inside were photographs, interviews, maps, evidence logs, a faded missing person poster, and one envelope that had never been properly cataloged. The envelope contained 3 photographs taken at the burial site. Nothing remarkable appeared at first. Ellison almost put them aside. Then she noticed the background. Behind the body recovery area stood a line of pine trees. One tree had been marked with a strange white symbol, a triangle. Inside it was a small vertical line. Ellison compared the photograph with the original crime scene map. The tree had never been mentioned in the detective notes. She returned to the location. The marker was gone, but the tree remained. And beneath the roots, investigators found something buried, a rusted metal ammunition box. Inside was a plastic bag. Inside the plastic bag was a key, and attached to the key was a number, 217. The number belonged to an abandoned storage facility 26 miles away. Investigators obtained a warrant. Unit 217 had not been opened in more than 20 years. The lock was still intact. Inside, beneath layers of dust, they found a folding chair, several empty fuel cans, old newspapers, and a wooden trunk. The trunk contained dozens of photographs. Some showed the mountains. Some showed vehicles. Some showed Claire. The photographs had been taken before her disappearance. She appeared unaware that she was being watched. There was Claire leaving work. Claire walking to her apartment. Claire standing beside her car. Claire entering the Blue Lantern. And in the final photograph, Claire was looking directly toward the camera. The image had been taken less than 48 hours before she disappeared. On the back was a handwritten sentence. She knows now. The cold case had just changed. The killer had not acted randomly. Claire had been watched. Forensic specialists re-examined the photographs. The paper was old. The ink was consistent with the early 1990s. Fingerprints were lifted from the plastic sleeve, but decades of degradation made identification difficult. Then investigators noticed something else. A photograph showed a vehicle parked behind Claire's apartment. The license plate was partially visible. The vehicle belonged to Daniel Voss, but Voss had told police he had never been near Claire's apartment, that he had survived 25 years. Now it was finally exposed. Detectives located Voss in another state. He agreed to an interview. He denied everything. He claimed the photographs were fabricated. He said he had known Claire casually but had never followed her. Then investigators showed him the photograph. His expression changed. Only for a second. But it was enough. The interview ended without an admission. Investigators continued digging. The storage unit records revealed that the unit had originally been rented under a false name, but the handwriting on the rental agreement was remarkably similar to handwriting found in Voss's old employment record. A forensic examiner confirmed the match was inconclusive but highly consistent. Still, investigators needed more. They returned to the original burial site. This time they brought ground-penetrating equipment. The forest floor was scanned section by section. At first, nothing. Then the machine detected a rectangular anomaly approximately 30 feet from the original burial location. Workers dug carefully. They found another layer of disturbed soil. Beneath it was a second canvas tarp. Inside was a rusted metal toolbox. The toolbox contained a cassette recorder and a cassette. The tape had survived. The audio quality was poor, static, whined. A vehicle engine. Then a woman's voice. Claire. Her voice was frightened. She said one sentence. "Why are you doing this?" A man's voice answered. The recording stopped. Forensic audio specialists cleaned the tape. The man's voice could not be conclusively identified, but investigators recognized something in the background. A distinctive mechanical sound. A vehicle with a damaged exhaust system. Records showed that Voss's truck had failed an inspection because of an exhaust problem less than a month before Claire disappeared. The evidence was becoming impossible to ignore, but investigators still lacked the final connection. Then came the buried evidence that changed everything. Beneath the toolbox was a sealed glass jar. Inside were several tiny objects. A button, a broken earring, a strip of blue-painted metal, and a motel key. The blue metal matched the paint fragment recovered from beneath Claire's fingernail. The motel key belonged to a roadside motel that had closed in 1996. Its archived guest register contained one surviving name, Daniel Voss, room 217. The same number found on the key inside the ammunition box. Investigators reconstructed the timeline. Claire finished work. Voss watched her. Claire drove toward the overlook. Voss followed. At some point, she entered his vehicle or was forced into it. He drove her to the remote service road. She fought back. The blue paint transferred beneath her fingernail. Later, Voss concealed her body. But the evidence suggested something even more disturbing. The photographs, the storage unit, the recordings, the hidden objects. This had not been a sudden crime. It had been planned. And someone had spent years protecting the truth. Detectives searched Voss's former property. They found nothing. Then an elderly neighbor remembered something. In 1992, Voss had owned a second vehicle, a blue utility van. The van had disappeared shortly after Claire's murder. Investigators traced the vehicle history. It had been sold 3 days after Claire vanished. The buyer was another man, a man named Richard Hale. Hale had died in 2008, but his widow still lived in Colorado. She remembered the van. She remembered that Voss had delivered it personally, and she remembered something else. There had been dark stains inside. Voss told her he had spilled paint. The widow had kept the original purchase paperwork. The paperwork contained a note written by Voss. "Do not ask questions." That sentence became the final crack in the wall. Investigators compared the paint from the van's interior with the blue fragment recovered from Claire's burial evidence. The chemical composition was consistent, not proof by itself, but combined with the photographs, the motel record, the hidden objects, the cassette, the false statements, and the vehicle evidence, the case finally had a coherent chain. Voss was arrested. He was 70 years old. He had spent nearly 3 decades believing the mountains had swallowed the truth. They had not. The arrest shocked Red Creek. People who had known Voss for years struggled to reconcile the quiet mechanic they remembered with the evidence emerging from the cold case investigation. But the most chilling discovery came afterward. Investigators searched the storage facility one final time. Behind a false wall was another box. Inside were photographs, not of Claire, of other women. Some were unidentified. Some had dates. Some were taken in Colorado. Others were from neighboring states. Police have never publicly confirmed how many of those women were victims, witnesses, or simply people Voss had photographed. But one image remains at the center of the investigation. It shows Claire standing outside the Blue Lantern on the night she disappeared. In the reflection of the restaurant window behind her, barely visible beneath the fluorescent lights, is a man watching her. The image was taken from across the street. The timestamp reads 11:52 p.m., 9 minutes before Voss claimed he arrived at the diner. The cold case that had once seemed destined to disappear had finally found its way back into the light. Claire Morgan had been missing for 11 days. Her family had waited 28 years for an answer. The mountain had kept its secret. The evidence had been buried. The witnesses had grown old. The detectives had retired. The town had changed. But the truth had never disappeared. It had been sitting in boxes, under roots, Inside forgotten photographs. On an old cassette. Waiting for someone to look again. And when investigators finally did, the mystery that had haunted Red Creek since 1992 began to collapse piece by piece. The arrest did not erase the year. It did not return Claire. It did not give her mother the answer she had wanted before she died. But it changed one sentence forever. For decades, the case had been described as unsolved. Now it had a name, a face, a history, and a truth that had remained buried beneath Colorado soil for nearly 30 years. The mountains had not forgotten. Neither had the evidence. Neither had Claire. Colorado, 1992. Cold case. Solved. Buried evidence reveals chilling truth. The first thing investigators noticed was not the body. It was the silence. At 5:17 on a freezing October morning in 1992, the small Colorado mountain community of Red Creek woke beneath a blanket of fog so thick that headlights disappeared only a few yards beyond the road. A logging truck had stopped near an abandoned service trail after the driver spotted something half buried beneath loose earth beside the tree line. At first, he thought it was an old coat. Then he saw the hand. By sunrise, deputies had sealed off the entire area. The victim was 24-year-old Claire Morgan, a local waitress who had vanished 11 days earlier after finishing a late shift at the Blue Lantern Diner. Her car had been found the following morning less than 2 miles away, parked beside an overlook above the Arkansas River. The driver's door was unlocked. Her purse was inside. Her keys were still in the ignition. One shoe was lying beneath the passenger seat. There had been no blood, no broken glass, no obvious struggle. For 11 days, investigators searched ravines, abandoned cabins, riverbanks, mountain roads, and miles of forest. Volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder through the darkness carrying flashlights. Claire's photograph appeared on television screens across Colorado. Posters covered gas stations and grocery stores. Her family waited beside a telephone that never seemed to ring. Then the body appeared. And suddenly, the disappearance became a homicide. The condition of the remains made identification difficult, but dental records confirmed what Claire's family had feared. She had been buried shallowly, wrapped in an old gray canvas tarp and covered with stones, branches, and wet soil. Whoever had placed her there had not expected the ground to be disturbed so quickly. But there was something stranger. The burial site was almost 4 miles from where Claire's car had been discovered. That meant someone had transported her. Someone had known the mountain. Someone had chosen a place hidden enough to remain undiscovered. And someone had left behind almost nothing. The original investigation moved fast. Detectives interviewed Claire's co-workers, friends, former boyfriends, neighbors, and dozens of residents. One name appeared repeatedly: Daniel Voss, 31 years old, a mechanic, recently divorced, and one of the last people known to have spoken with Claire. Voss admitted seeing her the night she disappeared. He claimed he had stopped at the Blue Lantern for coffee around 11:40 p.m. He said, Claire appeared tired but normal. According to him, they exchanged a few words. He left alone. His story sounded plausible, until investigators learned that his truck had been seen near the overlook shortly after midnight. Voss denied it. He said he had driven home directly from the diner. Police searched his truck. Nothing. They searched his garage. Nothing. They collected clothing, tools, photographs, and personal records. Still nothing. The case began to fracture. A witness reported seeing a dark pickup near the mountain road. Another claimed she heard a woman's voice near the overlook. A third said Claire had mentioned being afraid of someone during the week before her disappearance. But every lead collapsed. The forensic technology of 1992 offered few answers. There was no modern genetic genealogy, no widespread surveillance network, no smartphones recording locations, no digital trail showing where a person's vehicle had traveled. There was only physical evidence. And physical evidence can disappear. The tarp contained fibers, but the laboratory could not determine their origin. Soil recovered from Claire's clothing appeared similar to soil from several locations in the county. A partial boot impression was discovered near the burial site, but rain had destroyed most of the pattern. The most promising clue was a small metal fragment found beneath Claire's fingernail. It looked like paint, blue paint. Investigators compared it against Voss's truck. The truck was dark green. The fragment did not match. The investigation widened. Months became years. The Blue Lantern changed owners. The overlook was renovated. The old service road was eventually closed. Claire Morgan's name faded from newspapers. The case became one of those stories people in Red Creek mentioned quietly when winter arrived. Then, in 1998, Voss moved away. In 2003, Claire's mother died without knowing who had killed her daughter. In 2010, the original lead detective retired. And in 2017, the homicide file was transferred to a newly formed cold case unit. Detective Mara Ellison opened the box for the first time on a rainy Monday morning. Inside were photographs, interviews, maps, evidence logs, a faded missing person poster, and one envelope that had never been properly cataloged. The envelope contained 3 photographs taken at the burial site. Nothing remarkable appeared at first. Ellison almost put them aside. Then she noticed the background. Behind the body recovery area stood a line of pine trees. One tree had been marked with a strange white symbol, a triangle. Inside it was a small vertical line. Ellison compared the photograph with the original crime scene map. The tree had never been mentioned in the detective notes. She returned to the location. The marker was gone, but the tree remained. And beneath the roots, investigators found something buried, a rusted metal ammunition box. Inside was a plastic bag. Inside the plastic bag was a key, and attached to the key was a number, 217. The number belonged to an abandoned storage facility 26 miles away. Investigators obtained a warrant. Unit 217 had not been opened in more than 20 years. The lock was still intact. Inside, beneath layers of dust, they found a folding chair, several empty fuel cans, old newspapers, and a wooden trunk. The trunk contained dozens of photographs. Some showed the mountains. Some showed vehicles. Some showed Claire. The photographs had been taken before her disappearance. She appeared unaware that she was being watched. There was Claire leaving work. Claire walking to her apartment. Claire standing beside her car. Claire entering the Blue Lantern. And in the final photograph, Claire was looking directly toward the camera. The image had been taken less than 48 hours before she disappeared. On the back was a handwritten sentence. She knows now. The cold case had just changed. The killer had not acted randomly. Claire had been watched. Forensic specialists re-examined the photographs. The paper was old. The ink was consistent with the early 1990s. Fingerprints were lifted from the plastic sleeve, but decades of degradation made identification difficult. Then investigators noticed something else. A photograph showed a vehicle parked behind Claire's apartment. The license plate was partially visible. The vehicle belonged to Daniel Voss, but Voss had told police he had never been near Claire's apartment, that he had survived 25 years. Now it was finally exposed. Detectives located Voss in another state. He agreed to an interview. He denied everything. He claimed the photographs were fabricated. He said he had known Claire casually but had never followed her. Then investigators showed him the photograph. His expression changed. Only for a second. But it was enough. The interview ended without an admission. Investigators continued digging. The storage unit records revealed that the unit had originally been rented under a false name, but the handwriting on the rental agreement was remarkably similar to handwriting found in Voss's old employment records. A forensic examiner confirmed the match was inconclusive but highly consistent. Still, investigators needed more. They returned to the original burial site. This time they brought ground-penetrating equipment. The forest floor was scanned section by section. At first, nothing. Then the machine detected a rectangular anomaly approximately 30 feet from the original burial location. Workers dug carefully. They found another layer of disturbed soil. Beneath it was a second canvas tarp. Inside was a rusted metal toolbox. The toolbox contained a cassette recorder and a cassette. The tape had survived. The audio quality was poor, static, whined. A vehicle engine. Then a woman's voice. Claire. Her voice was frightened. She said one sentence. "Why are you doing this?" A man's voice answered. The recording stopped. Forensic audio specialists cleaned the tape. The man's voice could not be conclusively identified, but investigators recognized something in the background. A distinctive mechanical sound. A vehicle with a damaged exhaust system. Records showed that Voss's truck had failed an inspection because of an exhaust problem less than a month before Claire disappeared. The evidence was becoming impossible to ignore, but investigators still lacked the final connection. Then came the buried evidence that changed everything. Beneath the toolbox was a sealed glass jar. Inside were several tiny objects: a button, a broken earring, a strip of blue-painted metal, and a motel key. The blue metal matched the paint fragment recovered from beneath Claire's fingernail. The motel key belonged to a roadside motel that had closed in 1996. Its archived guest register contained one surviving name: Daniel Voss, room 217. The same number found on the quay inside the ammunition box. Investigators reconstructed the timeline. Claire finished work. Voss watched her. Claire drove toward the overlook. Voss followed. At some point, she entered his vehicle or was forced into it. He drove her to the remote service road. She fought back. The blue paint transferred beneath her fingernail. Later, Voss concealed her body. But the evidence suggested something even more disturbing: the photographs, the storage unit, the recordings, the hidden objects. This had not been a sudden crime. It had been planned. And someone had spent years protecting the truth. Detectives searched Voss's former property. They found nothing. Then an elderly neighbor remembered something. In 1992, Voss had owned a second vehicle, a blue utility van. The van had disappeared shortly after Claire's murder. Investigators traced the vehicle history. It had been sold 3 days after Claire vanished. The buyer was another man, a man named Richard Hale. Hale had died in 2008, but his widow still lived in Colorado. She remembered the van. She remembered that Voss had delivered it personally, and she remembered something else. There had been dark stains inside. Voss told her he had spilled paint. The widow had kept the original purchase paperwork. The paperwork contained a note written by Voss: "Do not ask questions." That sentence became the final crack in the wall. Investigators compared the paint from the van's interior with the blue fragment recovered from Claire's burial evidence. The chemical composition was consistent. Not proof by itself, but combined with the photographs, the motel record, the hidden objects, the cassette, the false statements, and the vehicle evidence, the case finally had a coherent chain. Voss was arrested. He was 70 years old. He had spent nearly 3 decades believing the mountains had swallowed the truth. They had not. The arrest shocked Red Creek. People who had known Voss for years struggled to reconcile the quiet mechanic they remembered with the evidence emerging from the cold case investigation. But the most chilling discovery came afterward. Investigators searched the storage facility one final time. Behind a false wall was another box. Inside were photographs, not of Claire, of other women. Some were unidentified. Some had dates. Some were taken in Colorado. Others were from neighboring states. Police have never publicly confirmed how many of those women were victims, witnesses, or simply people Voss had photographed. But one image remains at the center of the investigation. It shows Claire standing outside the Blue Lantern on the night she disappeared. In the reflection of the restaurant window behind her, barely visible beneath the fluorescent lights, is a man watching her. The image was taken from across the street. The timestamp reads 11:52 p.m., 9 minutes before Voss claimed he arrived at the diner. The cold case that had once seemed destined to disappear had finally found its way back into the light. Claire Morgan had been missing for 11 days. Her family had waited 28 years for an answer. The mountain had kept its secret. The evidence had been buried. The witnesses had grown old. The detectives had retired. The town had changed. But the truth had never disappeared. It had been sitting in boxes, under roots, inside forgotten photographs, on an old cassette, waiting for someone to look again. And when investigators finally did, the mystery that had haunted Red Creek since 1992 began to collapse piece by piece. The arrest did not erase the year. It did not return Claire. It did not give her mother the answer she had wanted before she died. But it changed one sentence forever. For decades, the case had been described as unsolved. Now it had a name, a face, a history, and a truth that had remained buried beneath Colorado soil for nearly 30 years. The mountains had not forgotten. Neither had the evidence. Neither had Claire. Colorado, 1992. Cold case. Solved buried evidence reveals chilling truth. The arrest should have been the end. Instead, it opened another door. 3 days after Daniel Voss was taken into custody, Detective Mara Ellison returned to the evidence room and placed the old cassette recorder on the table. She had listened to the cleaned recording more than 20 times. The same sequence always bothered her. Claire's frightened question, The man's response, the sudden silence. There was something missing, not from the words, from the sound. Behind the voices was a low mechanical rhythm. 4 pulses, then a pause. 4 pulses again. Ellison had originally assumed it was an engine. Now she was not so sure. She asked the forensic audio team to isolate it. They removed the wind. They reduced the static. They separated the frequencies. What emerged was not an engine. It was a piece of machinery, a hydraulic pump. That mattered because the original investigation had never connected Voss to any machinery capable of producing that sound. His profession was automotive repair, but another person in Red Creek owned equipment that matched it. A man named Walter Crane. Crane had operated a small excavation business outside town in 1992. He owned a hydraulic loader, several trucks, and a remote storage yard less than 2 miles from the service road where Claire's body was discovered. Crane had been interviewed once. Only once. His name appeared on page 47 of the original case file. 3 sentences. He had reported seeing nothing unusual. Ellison stared at the page. Then she looked at the date. The interview had been conducted 12 days after Claire's body was found. Why had nobody asked him about machinery? She requested the original interview recorded. There was none. Only handwritten notes. Crane had died in 2001. But his company record survived. So did the equipment logs. And one entry stopped the investigation cold. October 18th. Sill 1992. A hydraulic loader had been taken from the yard at 12:34 a.m. Returned at 4:12 a.m. No operator name. No destination. No explanation. Claire disappeared that same night. The distance between the excavation yard and the overlook was less than 15 minutes by truck. Ellison ordered a new search. Not of Crane's house. Not of Voss's property. Of the old excavation yard. The place had changed dramatically over the years. The original office was gone. The equipment sheds had collapsed. Trees had grown through the concrete. Rusted machinery sat beneath weeds, but one structure remained. A narrow concrete bunker built into the hillside. The original plans described it as a drainage storage room. Investigators opened the door. Inside was darkness. And on the wall, beneath layers of dust, someone had scratched 3 numbers. 9, 10, 11. The date was impossible to ignore. Ellison ordered the room sealed. Technicians photographed every surface. Then they found the floor. One section of concrete looked different, newer. The color did not match the rest. Ground-penetrating radar showed a hollow cavity beneath it. Workers broke through. Beneath the concrete was a narrow shack. Inside were fragments of cloth, a rusted bracelet, and a woman's hair clip. The bracelet did not belong to Claire. Her family confirmed it. The hair clip did not match anything found among Claire's possessions. The excavation yard had just become something far more disturbing. Investigators began asking whether Claire had been the only victim. The answer came from the storage photographs. There were 6 unidentified women, 6 sets of photographs, 6 dates. The earliest was 1989. The latest was 1995. Claire's file was marked with a red circle, but another file had 2 words written across the front. Still missing. The name was Laura Bennett, 21 years old. Last seen in 1990. Her disappearance had never been linked to Red Creek. She had been reported missing from a town nearly 70 miles away. Yet one photograph showed her standing beside a mountain road. The photograph had been taken 3 months before Claire disappeared. The background was unmistakable. It was the same overlook. Ellison felt the case changing beneath her feet. Voss might not have acted alone, or Voss might not have been responsible for everything. The old investigation had focused on a single disappearance. The new evidence suggested a pattern that had begun years earlier. Investigators searched archived missing person files across Colorado. 4 women had disappeared between 1989 and 1995. All had been between 19 and 30 years old. 3 had worked late shifts. 2 had vehicles recovered near mountain roads. 1 had been found dead. The cases had never been connected. Until now. Then investigators found the blue van. It had been destroyed in a scrapyard in 1997. But the scrapyard owner had kept photographs of vehicles before crushing them for insurance records. One photograph showed the van's rear compartment. There was a metal ring mounted to the floor, a restraint point. Another photograph showed something else, a dark stain. Investigators retrieved archived material from the scrapyard. The stain could not produce a usable DNA profile. A chemical testing confirmed it was biological material. The van was no longer available. The evidence was decades old, and the person who could have explained it was dead. Walter Crane, the excavation contractor. Investigators began reconstructing his relationship with Voss. They discovered that Crane had employed Voss occasionally in 1991 and 1992. Voss had repaired his trucks. Crane had provided him access to equipment. They had worked together on remote construction sites. Their relationship was never documented as close, but financial records showed repeated cash payments from Crane to Voss. Some were labeled as repair work. Others had no explanation. Then came a discovery that changed everything. A former employee of Crane's company contacted investigators. His name was Michael Rains. He was 68. He remembered Claire, not because he had known her, because he remembered seeing her car. Rains said that on the night Claire disappeared, he had arrived at the excavation yard shortly after midnight. He was supposed to pick up a company truck, but the gate was open. The yard was empty, except for Voss. Voss was standing beside the blue utility van. Rains remembered asking what he was doing there. Voss reportedly said he was helping Crane move equipment. Rains left. He never mentioned it to police. Why? Because nobody had asked. And because, according to Rains, Crane had warned employees never to interfere with Voss. The testimony was significant. But Rains remembered something even more important. There had been another person in the yard. A woman. He could not see her face. She was sitting inside the van. Rains said he heard someone knock against the metal wall from inside 3 times. Then silence. For 28 years, that memory had remained buried. Now it had become evidence. Investigators showed Rains the photographs recovered from the storage unit. He identified the van. He identified Voss. Then he pointed to one photograph, a man standing in the background. Walter Crane. The photograph had been taken near the overlook. Crane was not supposed to be there. Neither was Voss. The case now had 2 men, 2 vehicles, to separate locations, and a growing collection of evidence suggesting cooperation. But there was still no confession. Voss refused to speak. His attorney claimed the investigation was built on unreliable memories and contaminated evidence. The defense argued that photographs could not establish when or where they had been taken. The audio recording did not clearly identify the speaker. The paint fragment was consistent with several possible sources. The old witnesses were uncertain, and Walter Crane was dead. The prosecution needed something stronger. Ellison returned to the original case file. She read every page, every report, every handwritten note, every discarded lead. Then she found a name she had never seen before. Evelyn Shaw, a nurse. She had called police for days after Claire disappeared. Her statement was only 7 lines long. She reported seeing a woman walking near the overlook, but investigators had dismissed her account because she could not identify the woman. Ellison located Shaw. She was 82. Her memory was imperfect, but when Ellison showed her Claire's photograph, Shaw immediately recognized her. Then she said something that was never recorded in 1992. Claire had not been walking alone. A man was following her. Shaw remembered the man's jacket. Dark, heavy, with a pale stripe across the shoulder. Ellison searched old photographs of Voss. Nothing. Then she found photographs of Crane. There it was. The jacket. The same design. Shaw could not say with absolute certainty that Crane was the man she saw, but the possibility was enough to reopen another line of investigation. Investigators searched Crane's former home. His widow had died years earlier. The property had been sold, but the basement remained largely untouched. Behind an old furnace was a steel cabinet. Inside were business records, tax documents, equipment manuals, and a small notebook. The notebook contained dates, locations, initials. Most meant nothing, until investigators compared them with missing person report. 3 dates matched. 3 women had disappeared within 72 hours of the dates written in Crane's notebook. Claire's date was there too. Next to it were 2 initials, DV, and beneath them, a single word, finished. The evidence did not prove what happened, but it revealed something terrifying. Someone had been keeping records. Someone had been tracking disappearances. And someone had written Claire's initials into that record before her body was discovered. Voss remained in custody. The investigators now faced a deeper question. Was he the killer? Or was he protecting someone else? Ellison requested a second interview. This time she brought the notebook. She placed it on the table. Voss looked at it. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he asked one question. Where did you find that? It was the first crack. Ellison leaned forward. She did not accuse him. She simply waited. Voss looked down at the table. His hands began to shake. Then he whispered something that changed the entire investigation. Crane wasn't the first. The room went silent. Ellison asked him what he meant. Voss refused to explain. He asked for his lawyer. The interview ended. But the sentence remained. Crane wasn't the first. That meant the mountain had been hiding something much older than Claire's murder. Something that might explain why women had disappeared from the region for years. Something that might explain the photographs, the storage unit, the excavation yard, the blue van, and the buried evidence. Outside the interrogation room, investigators began pulling every missing person report from the surrounding counties dating back to 1985. By midnight, they had found 12 cases. By morning, there were 17. And in one forgotten file from 1987, they found a photograph of a woman standing beside a mountain road. On the back of the photograph were 4 handwritten words. She saw the road. The handwriting looked familiar. Ellison placed it beside Crane's notebook. The letters matched. Not perfectly, but closely enough to send a forensic examiner back to the laboratory. The cold case was no longer just about Claire Morgan. It was becoming a map drawn across Colorado, a map of abandoned roads, remote properties, missing women, and men who had spent decades believing nobody would ever connect the dots. Then, just before sunrise, the forensic examiner called Ellison. There was another match. The blue paint recovered from Claire's fingernail was not merely consistent with the old van. It contained a rare industrial compound used on excavation equipment operated by Walter Crane's company. And the same compound had been found on the rusted hydraulic loader listed in the 1992 equipment log. For the first time, the evidence connected Claire directly to the excavation yard. The mountain had finally given investigators a direction, but it had not yet given them the whole truth. And somewhere inside the old case file was one final question waiting to be answered. Why had Voss said Crane wasn't the first? Because if Crane had inherited the secret from someone else, then the nightmare surrounding Red Creek had begun long before 1992, and the person who started it might still be hidden in the shadows of the original investigation. Colorado 1992, cold case, solved buried evidence, reveals chilling truth. The sentence stayed with Detective Mara Ellison long after Daniel Voss was taken back to his cell. Crane wasn't the first. For words, nothing more. But for words were enough to reopen an investigation that had already stretched across generations. By sunrise, the cold case unit had stopped treating Claire Morgan's murder as an isolated homicide. Every disappearance around Red Creek was being placed on the same timeline. Every abandoned road was marked. Every former employee connected to Walter Crane was being located. Every piece of evidence from 1985 onward was being pulled from county archives. The mountain roads became the center of everything. Ellison spread a large paper map across the conference table. Red Creek sat in the middle. The overlook was marked in black. The excavation yard in red. The Blue Lantern Diner in yellow. Then investigators added the locations where other women had disappeared. A strange pattern emerged. Most of the cases formed a loose arc around the same network of mountain roads. Not one road. Several. Old service routes. Logging trails. Construction access roads. Places most residents had no reason to visit. Places where a vehicle could disappear for hours without attracting attention. One investigator placed a pin beside a 1987 disappearance. Another marked a 1989 case. Then 1990. Then 1991. Then Claire. The pin seemed random at first. Then Ellison noticed something. Every location was within driving distance of an abandoned quarry once operated by a man named Samuel Rourke. The name meant nothing to the younger detective. It meant everything to one retired officer. Harold Mercer had worked the county in the late 1980s. He was 76 when Ellison found him. Mercer lived alone in a small house outside Pueblo. His walls were covered with photographs of old patrol cars, mountains, and officers who had long since retired. When Ellison mentioned Samuel Rourke, Mercer's expression changed. He did not answer immediately. Then he said, "You shouldn't be looking at him." Ellison asked why. Mercer stared toward the window. "Because we already did." The original investigation into Rourke had happened in 1988. A 19-year-old woman named Melissa Grant had disappeared after leaving a gas station. Her car was discovered near the quarry. Rourke had owned the land. He had also been seen speaking with Melissa that night. Police questioned him. He denied knowing her. But an employee contradicted him. The employee claimed Rourke had offered Melissa a ride. The statement was never enough for an arrest. Then the employee disappeared from the investigation. His name was Thomas Keene. Ellison found him living in Arizona. Keene was 81. He remembered the interview. He remembered the pressure. And he remembered why his statement vanished. Rourke had threatened him. Not directly. He had simply told Keene that people who talk too much sometimes disappeared from small towns. Keene had been frightened. So he withdrew his statement. Melissa Grant was never found. Her case remained unsolved. But there was something else. Keene remembered another man visiting the quarry, Daniel Voss. At the time, Voss was only 27. He was already repairing vehicles for Rourke's company. That meant Voss had known Rourke years before Claire disappeared. The connection moved backward. Claire, Crane, Voss, Rourke, and potentially even earlier. Ellison returned to the interrogation room. Voss was sitting quietly. He looked older than his 70 years. His shoulders were bent. His face was expressionless. Ellison placed a photograph of Samuel Rourke on the table. Voss stared at it. Then he looked away. "You knew him," Ellison said. No answer. "You worked for him." Silence. "You knew about Melissa Grant." Voss finally looked up. "You don't understand." "Then explain it." He shook his head. He wasn't the beginning. Again. The same phrase. Crane wasn't the first. Rourke wasn't the first. Someone else came before them. Ellison asked for a name. Voss refused. She asked what the men had been doing. He refused again. Finally, after several minutes, Voss whispered something. They weren't hunting people. Ellison waited. They were hunting secrets. The statement sounded almost meaningless until Voss explained. Rourke had been involved in illegal dumping operations during the 1980s. Industrial chemicals were being transported into remote mountain areas and buried without permits. Several workers knew about it. Some had threatened to expose the operation. Women who lived nearby had seen trucks moving at night. Some had taken photographs. Some had asked questions. Some had disappeared. Ellison felt the room become cold. The disappearances might not have begun as random acts of violence. They may have started because people witnessed something they were never supposed to see. But Claire? What had she seen? Investigators returned to the Blue Lantern. The diner had changed owners twice. The original building still existed. An elderly former waitress named Patricia Lowell agreed to speak with investigators. She had worked the night shift in 1992. She remembered Claire. More importantly, she remembered a conversation Claire had 2 nights before disappearing. Claire had been nervous. She had told Patricia that someone had been leaving photographs under her apartment door. Not threatening letters. Photographs. Pictures of trucks. Pictures of mountains. Pictures of barrels being unloaded at night. Claire believed someone was dumping chemicals near the old quarry. Patricia had assumed Claire was frightened because she had stumbled onto something dangerous. She had not realized how dangerous. Claire had planned to give the photographs to police, but she never did. Patricia had one remaining photograph. She had kept it for 28 years. She retrieved it from a box. The image showed 3 trucks parked beside the quarry. One belonged to Rourke's company. One belonged to Crane. The third was the blue utility van, Voss's van. On the back of the photograph was a handwritten date, October 6th, Sill 1992, 4 days before Claire disappeared. Investigators examined the image. There was something in the far background. A 4th vehicle, a white sedan. Its license plate was barely visible. The plate was enhanced. The vehicle belonged to Claire. She had been there. She had photographed the operation herself. Now the motive began to take shape. Claire had seen something. She had documented it. Someone discovered that she had evidence, and 11 days later, she was dead. But there was still another question. Who took the photographs? Claire? Someone watching Claire? Investigators compared the photographs with the negatives recovered from the storage unit. They found a disturbing fact. The photographs of Claire had been taken with the same camera used to photograph the illegal dumping site. That meant whoever had been following Claire had also been documenting the operation, and that person had kept the evidence. The camera itself was missing, but the storage unit contained one undeveloped roll of film. Forensic technicians developed it. Frame after frame appeared. The quarry, the trucks, the barrels, Crane, Rourke, Voss, then Claire, then something else, a fourth man. He stood several yards away from the others. His face was turned toward the camera. Investigators enlarged the image. The man was not a stranger. He was Harold Mercer, the retired officer who had told Ellison that she should not be looking at Rourke. Ellison stared at the photograph. Mercer had been a police officer in the county when Melissa disappeared. He had been one of the first officers to interview Rourke. He had also been assigned to Claire's case. And according to the original records, Mercer had been the officer who decided the quarry connection was irrelevant. The discovery stunned the team. Ellison contacted Mercer again. This time, he refused to speak. A warrant was obtained for his old property. The search began before dawn. Investigators found no weapon, no photographs, no obvious evidence. Then, beneath a loose floorboard in the garage, they found a metal box. Inside was a collection of police reports. Most were copies. Some had never been filed. One belonged to Melissa Grant. Another belonged to Claire Morgan. A third belonged to Laura Bennett. All three reports contained handwritten notes. Different dates. Different officers. Same handwriting. Mercer. But the most disturbing document was not a report. It was a list. 21 names. 21 dates. Some were crossed out. Some were marked with initials. 6 corresponded to women whose disappearances had never been solved. Claire's name was near the bottom. Next to it were 2 words. Problem solved. Ellison felt the entire case shit. Mercer had not simply been aware of the disappearances. He had been inside the investigation. He had controlled what evidence was collected. He had influenced which leads were pursued. And he had known exactly what Claire had discovered. But there was one problem. Mercer was not the man heard on the cassette. Audio experts confirmed it. The voice belonged to someone younger. Someone whose speech patterns were consistent with Daniel Voss. Voss was involved. Mercer was involved. Crane had been involved. Rourke had been involved. The question was no longer whether there had been a conspiracy. The question was how far it reached. Investigators searched old financial records. They discovered payments from Rourke's company to Crane, payments from Crane to Voss, and payments from an unidentified account to Mercer. The transactions continued for years, then stopped in 1992, exactly 3 weeks after Claire's murder. The money trail was finally connecting the men, but investigators still needed the physical evidence that could place them together on the night Claire disappeared. They returned to the old quarry. The ground was scanned again. This time they went deeper. Near the edge of a collapsed drainage tunnel, the radar detected a large underground chamber. Workers removed layers of soil and concrete. At the bottom, they found metal barrels, dozens of them. Some were empty. Some still contained chemical residue. But hidden behind the barrels was a second chamber. Inside was a wooden table, a chair, and a wall covered with photographs. The photographs showed women. Some were identified. Some were not. Claire was there. Laura Bennett was there. Melissa Grant was there. And beside Claire's photograph was a handwritten date, October 10th, Sill 1992, the date she disappeared. Underneath it was another sentence. She brought the evidence. Investigators photographed everything. Then they found a final object, a cassette tape, different from the one recovered earlier. This tape contained a conversation, 2 male voices. One was Voss, the other was unknown. But after enhancement, investigators recognized several words. Mercer knows. Rourke is finished. Crane will handle the burial. Then silence. The tape ended. For the first time, investigators had direct evidence connecting the men, but the unknown voice remained. And Ellison realized something terrifying. If Voss was not the mastermind, then someone had been giving orders. Someone who had remained outside the photographs, outside the reports, outside the evidence. Someone whose identity had been deliberately erased. Then investigators found the name. It appeared in an old property deed connected to the quarry, a name that had been removed from the modern records. A man who had owned the land before Rourke. A man who had trained Mercer as a young officer. A man whose company had handled the original dumping contract. His name was Arthur Bell. He had died in 1984, but his death certificate contained a strange detail. His official date of death was March 3rd. The quarry records listed him as signing a contract 6 months later. Someone had been using his name after he died, and suddenly the case became larger than anyone imagined. The disappearances had not started with Rourke. They had not started with Crane. They had not started with Voss. The system had existed before them, and Claire Morgan had become the person who finally found proof. She had taken photographs. She had seen the trucks. She had discovered the buried operation, and someone had decided that she could never tell anyone. The cold case was beginning to reveal its deepest secret. The killer might have been caught, but the network behind the murder had not yet been fully exposed, and somewhere in the old records was the identity of the person who had kept the entire operation alive for decades. The answer was waiting, buried beneath another layer of lie. Colorado, 1992. Case solved. Buried evidence reveals chilling truth. The name Arthur Bell should have belonged to history. He had been dead for 8 years before Claire Morgan disappeared. His company had collapsed. His property had changed hands. His name had vanished from most public records, yet his signature kept appearing. Contracts, land transfers, equipment invoices, storage agreements, even police documents. Someone had been using a dead man's identity. Detective Mara Ellison placed every document across the conference table and photographed them side by side. The signatures were almost identical. The dates were impossible. Arthur Bell was supposed to have died in 1984, but the signature appeared on a quarry lease dated 1989. Another appeared on a trucking agreement from 1991. Then one appeared on a document dated October 12th, still 1992, 2 days after Claire Morgan disappeared. The signature was not forged by someone careless. Whoever had done it knew exactly how Bell wrote. They knew where he had lived. They knew the name of his company. They knew how to make the paperwork look legitimate. And they had used that identity to move money and property for years. The investigation shifted from murder to something far larger, a hidden operation, a network, and a person who had remained invisible while others carried out the dangerous work. Ellison returned to the old property records. Bell's original company was called Bell Mountain Material. Officially, it handled excavation, gravel, and road construction. Unofficially, investigators now believed it had been used to transport industrial waste into remote Colorado terrain. The evidence was everywhere. Buried barrels, unregistered trucks, cash payments, false invoices, disappearing employees, and women who had seen too much. But Claire's murder remained the center. She had discovered the operation. She had photographed it. She had planned to report it. Then she vanished. The investigators needed to know who knew she had the photographs. The answer appeared in an old phone record. Claire had called one person the afternoon before her disappearance, a lawyer named Martin Hale. The call lasted 6 minutes. Hale was dead, but his former secretary was alive. She remembered Claire. She remembered the call, and she remembered what Claire had said afterward. Claire believed she had evidence of illegal dumping. She wanted legal protection before giving the photographs to police. Hale had agreed to meet her the next morning. That meeting never happened, but the secretary had kept Hale's appointment book. The page for October 10th, still 1992, contained one handwritten entry. Claire Morgan, 9:30 a.m., urgent. Below it was another entry. Cancel. The word was written in different ink. Someone had canceled Claire's appointment before she arrived. The secretary remembered Hale receiving a phone call that morning. He had looked frightened. He told her to lock the office door. Then he left. He never explained why. Investigators searched Hale's surviving file. Most were gone, but one folder remained. It contained copies of documents connected to Bell Mountain Material, and one letter. The letter had never been mailed. It was addressed to Claire. Inside was a warning. Stop asking questions about the quarrel. No signature. No return address. The paper was analyzed. The letter had been typed on an old manual typewriter. Investigators traced the typewriter. It had belonged to the Red Creek Sheriff's Office. That discovery sent a shock through the unit. The threat had been written inside a police building. Someone with access had threatened Claire. and only a small number of people could have done it. Mercer was one, but he was not the only one. Investigators examined staffing records from 1992. One name appeared repeatedly in connection with the quarry investigation: Deputy Frank Dalton. Dalton had retired in 2004. He had moved to Montana. When investigators contacted him, he agreed to speak. He denied knowing Claire. Then investigators showed him the photograph from the quarry. Dalton was in the background. He was standing beside a patrol vehicle. He had been there. He admitted it. He claimed he had been checking for trespassers, but his patrol log said otherwise. According to the log, Dalton had been at the station all night. Someone had falsified the record. The handwriting belonged to Mercer. Another layer. Another lie. Dalton eventually admitted he had seen Claire near the quarry for days before she disappeared. She had been taking photographs. He said she confronted him. She asked why police were allowing trucks to dump material there. Dalton told her to go home. Claire refused. She said she had proof. Dalton became visibly nervous when investigators asked what happened next. He said he called Mercer. Mercer arrived 20 minutes later. With him came Walter Crane and Daniel Voss. 3 men. 1 location. 4 days before Claire vanished. That meeting had never appeared in the original case file. Dalton had never reported it. Why? Because Mercer told him to forget it. Dalton finally admitted something else. The men had taken Claire's camera. They did not hurt her. Not that day. They simply took the camera and warned her. Claire left. But the photographs had already been developed. She had copies. That was the problem. The men had not taken everything. Claire had kept a second set. Investigators searched her family's belongings again. Her mother had preserved boxes of Claire's personal items for decades. Inside an old sewing cabinet, investigators found an envelope. No name. No address. Just a date. October 9th, Sill 1992. The envelope contained 6 photographic negatives. Forensic technicians developed them. The images showed the quarry at night. Trucks. Barrels. Men. And 1 structure. A concrete bunker. The same bunker where investigators had found the hidden shack. But 1 photograph showed something nobody had seen before. A man standing beside the bunker door. His face was clear. It was not Voss. Not Crane. Not Rourke. Not Mercer. It was Martin Hale, the lawyer. The man Claire had planned to meet. The man who supposedly wanted to help her. The man who had died years later under circumstances officially ruled accidental. Ellison froze. If Hale had been involved, the entire story changed. Perhaps he had not been protecting Claire. Perhaps he had been protecting the operation. Investigators examined Hale's financial records. There were unexplained deposits, large amounts, payments from companies connected to Bell Mountain Material. The money continued for years. Even after Bell had supposedly died, Hale had been part of the network, but that still did not explain who was giving orders. The answer came from a document hidden inside Hale's old law office, a client list. 1 name was written in pencil: A. Bell. Under it was a phone number. Investigators traced the number. It had been disconnected in 1985, but old telephone records revealed that calls had been made from it long after Bell's death. The last call occurred on October 9th, Sill 1992, 1 day before Claire disappeared. The call lasted 14 minutes. It originated from a private line at the Red Creek Sheriff's Office, the number assigned to Mercer's office. Ellison returned to Mercer. This time, she confronted him with the evidence. She placed Claire's photograph on the table, then the quarry photograph, then the Bell documents, then the phone record. Mercer looked at each one. He said nothing. Finally, he whispered, "You have no idea what you're uncovering." Ellison asked him who Arthur Bell really was. Mercer shook his head. Bell was a name. Whose name? No one you can arrest. That answer made the room colder. Ellison asked about Claire. Mercer looked directly at her. She was never supposed to find the tunnel. The statement was almost a confession. Almost. But Mercer refused to say more. He asked for immunity. Investigators refused. Then he made a bargain. He would identify the people involved if prosecutors agreed not to charge him with Claire's murder. The negotiation lasted 6 hours. Eventually, Mercer gave them a name. Not Arthur Bell. Not Rourke. Not Crane. A woman. Eleanor Bell. Arthur Bell's daughter. Alive. Living under another name. And according to Mercer, she had inherited everything: the land, the money, the network, the secrets. She had been 19 when her father died. She had learned how the operation worked. She had learned which officials could be trusted, which records could disappear, which witnesses could be frightened, and which men could be paid. But there was something Mercer did not know. Eleanor had kept her father's notebooks, and one of those notebooks contained the original list. Investigators located her in another state. She was 81. When they arrived at her home, she did not seem surprised. She looked at the detectives, then at the warrant, and said one sentence: "You finally found the wrong person." Inside her house, investigators found no obvious evidence, but in the basement was an old trunk. The trunk was locked. The key was hidden inside a family Bible. Inside the trunk were documents from Bell Mountain material, photographs, bank records, maps, and dozens of handwritten pages. The pages revealed a horrifying system. The illegal dumping had begun in the 1970s. Officials had been bribed. Landowners had been paid. Police reports had been altered. Workers who threatened to expose the operation were fired. Some were threatened. And several women who photographed the dumping sites had disappeared. Claire was not the first. She was simply the first whose evidence survived. Then investigators found the page dated October 10th, Sill 1992. The handwriting was Eleanor's. It contained 3 names: Voss, Crane, Mercer. Beside them was a single instruction: recover the photographs. Underneath was another line: if necessary, silence her. The case had finally reached the top, but one question remained. Did Eleanor order Claire's murder? She denied it. She claimed the instruction meant to intimidate Claire, not kill her. But the next page was worse. It described a meeting at the excavation yard. The date was October 10th. The time was 12:40 a.m. And the final line read, "Voss has the girl." Ellison stared at the words. Claire had disappeared around midnight. Voss had been at the yard. Crane's machinery had been operating. Mercer had been connected to the police response. And Eleanor Bell had been directing the recovery of the evidence. The entire chain was finally visible. But there was still one missing piece. What happened between the moment Claire reached the mountain road and the moment her body was buried? The answer was hidden in the second cassette. And when investigators enhanced the final 30 seconds of that recording, they heard something nobody had expected. Claire crying. Voss breathing heavily. A vehicle door closing. Then another man's voice. Not Voss. Not Crane. Not Mercer. The voice said, "Take her to the quarry." The recording ended. But investigators now knew the voice. They had heard it before. In an old police interview from 1988. The voice belonged to Walter Crane. Crane was dead, but his voice had finally returned from the past. And for the first time, the night Claire Morgan disappeared could be reconstructed almost minute by minute. The cold case was no longer a mystery without shape. It was a chain of decisions, a chain of people, a chain of lies. And at the center was a woman who had discovered what powerful men had spent years buried. Claire had not disappeared into the mountain. She had been taken there, and someone had made sure the mountain would keep her secret. Colorado 1992, cold case. Solved buried evidence reveals chilling truth. The second cassette changed the case because it finally gave investigators something they had been missing for 28 years. A sequence, not a theory, not a memory, not a faded photograph. A sequence of voices and sounds recorded on the night Claire Morgan disappeared. The tape began with static, then whined, then the distant rumble of a vehicle. A door slammed. Claire's voice appeared faintly beneath the noise. She sounded frightened. She asked where they were taking her. No one answered. Then came the voice investigators identified as Walter Crane. "Take her to the quarry." A pause. Voss said something too quietly to understand. Crane answered, "Now." The vehicle moved. The recording ended. That was all. But it was enough to establish one critical fact. Claire had been alive when she was taken to the quarry. She had not disappeared voluntarily. She had been transported. And someone had been directing the movement. Investigators returned to the old excavation yard. They reconstructed the terrain as it had existed in 1992 using archive survey maps and aerial photographs. The blue van would have entered through the eastern gate. The hydraulic loader would have been parked near the bunker. The quarry road would have provided a direct route to the hidden chamber. Everything aligned. Then the forensic team discovered another piece of evidence. Deep inside the drainage tunnel, beneath layers of sediment, they found a small metal clasp. It belonged to the same type of coat Claire had been wearing. The clasp had been broken. Microscopic fibers remained trapped inside the metal. Testing revealed that the fibers matched Claire's clothing. The implication was immediate. Claire had struggled inside the tunnel. But the evidence did not stop there. A second fiber was recovered. Dark wool. Investigators compared it with clothing found in photographs of Walter Crane. The material was consistent with the coat he had been seen wearing in 1992. The evidence was still circumstantial, but the pattern was becoming harder to dismiss. Claire had been taken to the quarry. Crane had been present. Voss had been present. Mercer had been involved in the cover-up. And Eleanor Bell had demanded that the photographs be recovered. The case had moved from uncertainty to reconstruction. But one question remained. Who actually killed Claire? The medical evidence had never provided a clear answer. Her remains had been too damaged. The original autopsy concluded that she had died from severe trauma, but the exact mechanism could not be established. Now, with modern forensic methods, investigators returned to the preserved skeletal material. A specialist examined microscopic fractures. The conclusion was disturbing. Claire had suffered a significant injury before death, but there was something else. Tiny traces of industrial residue were found embedded in the material. The same chemical compound used at Bell Mountain's dumping operation. Claire had been exposed to the site before she died. She had not merely been buried there, she had been held there. Investigators searched the old quarry chamber again. This time they looked at the wall. Scratches appeared near the lower section. 3 sets. One at shoulder height. Another much lower. A third almost touching the floor. At first, they looked random. Then the forensic team noticed the pattern. The scratches had been made by a metal object. Perhaps a ring. Perhaps a bracelet. Claire had worn a silver bracelet the night she disappeared. It had never been recovered. Her mother had remembered it clearly. The bracelet had been a gift from Claire's father. It was missing from her remains. Then investigators found it. Not in the tunnel. Not in the grave. Inside the old wooden table discovered in the hidden chamber. The bracelet had been placed inside a narrow drawer. The drawer was locked. The lock had to be forced open. Inside was Claire's bracelet. And beside it was a folded piece of paper. Only 3 words were written on it. She fought back. The handwriting belonged to Daniel Voss. That discovery became one of the strongest pieces of evidence against him. Voss had denied ever entering the chamber. He had denied seeing Claire after the night she disappeared. Yet his handwriting was inside a locked drawer containing her personal property. Investigators confronted him again. This time, he did not deny knowing about the bracelet. He said Crane had given it to him. Why? Voss stared at the table. He told me to keep it. Why? He wanted proof. Proof of what? Voss did not answer. Ellison pushed the photograph of Claire across the table. You were there. Voss closed his eyes. You took her to the quarry. Still no answer. You buried her. Silence. Then Voss whispered, I didn't kill her. It was the first direct denial. But it was also the first time he had admitted being present. Ellison asked who killed Claire. Voss said nothing. She asked whether Crane did it. Voss shook his head. She asked whether Mercer did it. Another shake. She asked about Eleanor Bell. Voss looked up. She never touched her. Then who did? Voss stared at the wall. The person you haven't found. That sentence became the new center of the investigation. There was another person. Someone Voss feared. Someone who had not appeared in the record. Someone who had been present that night. Investigators searched every document again. They found references to an unidentified contractor. A man who had worked for Bell Mountain Materials. His name appeared only as initials. RH. The initials appeared on transportation invoices, equipment logs, fuel receipts, one police memo, and the October 10th quarry record. RH had signed for a company truck at 11:58 p.m. That was less than 20 minutes before Claire disappeared. Investigators searched employee databases. There were dozens of RH combinations, but one stood out. Richard Hale, the lawyer, the same man Claire had planned to meet, the same man whose photograph had been found at the quarry, the same man whose financial records showed unexplained payments from Bell Mountain Material. But Hale was dead. Officially, He had died in a vehicle accident in 1999. Investigators reviewed the accident. The report said Hale had lost control on an icy mountain road. No witnesses. No mechanical failure. No signs of foul play. But now the investigators noticed something strange. Hale's vehicle had been registered to a different company, Bell Mountain Materials. And the accident occurred on the same mountain road where another missing woman had disappeared in 1990, a road that had never been considered significant. Investigators requested the original vehicle. It had been scrapped years earlier, but insurance photographs remained. The front of the vehicle showed heavy damage. The windshield was shattered. The steering wheel was bent. But the driver's side airbag had never deployed. A forensic reconstruction suggested the vehicle had been struck from behind before leaving the road. The accident might not have been an accident. Hale may have been eliminated because he knew too much, or because he had become a liability. The case was expanding again. The network had not only buried victims, it may have buried its own members. Then came a breakthrough from an unexpected source. A former employee of Hale's law firm contacted investigators. Her name was Linda Pierce. She had been a junior secretary in 1992. She remembered Hale receiving a package shortly before Claire disappeared. The package contained photographs. Hale had opened it in his office. He had become pale. Then he told Linda to destroy the envelope. She didn't. She kept it. For 28 years. Inside the envelope was a faded return label. No sender. But the handwriting matched the notes found in Eleanor Bell's basement. The package had been sent from the quarry office, and the date was October 9th, one day before Claire disappeared. The photographs inside were copies of Claire's images. Someone had sent them to Hale. Someone knew Claire had evidence. Someone wanted Hale to understand what was happening, and someone had been monitoring Claire closely enough to know she had approached him. Investigators began reconstructing the final 24 hours. At 4:30 p.m., Claire left work. At 5:10, she visited her apartment. At 6:05, she drove toward the quarry. At 7:22, she photographed the dumping operation. At 8:11, she returned home. At 9 o'clock, she called Hale. At 9:30, Hale received the package. At 10:15, Claire left her apartment again. At 11:40, she arrived near the Blue Lantern. At 11:52, someone photographed her. At 11:58, RH signed for a company truck. At approximately midnight, Claire disappeared. At 12:34, the hydraulic loader left the excavation yard. At 4:12 a.m., it returned. The timeline was almost complete, but there was a gap. Between 11:52 p.m. and 12:34 a.m., 42 minutes. 42 minutes in which Claire's life changed forever. Investigators searched for witnesses who might remember those minutes. One name surfaced. A truck driver named Samuel Ortiz. He had been driving through Red Creek that night. He was 83 when investigators found him. He remembered seeing a woman near the overlook. He remembered a dark vehicle. And he remembered another vehicle behind it. A white sedan. Claire's car. Ortiz said the woman appeared to be arguing with someone. He could not hear the words. Then the dark vehicle moved. Claire's sedan followed. The two vehicles disappeared down the service road. Ortiz thought nothing of it. Until investigators showed him Claire's photograph. He recognized her. Then he pointed to the dark vehicle. It wasn't a truck, he said. It was a van. The blue van. Voss's van. The final gap was closing. But Ortiz remembered something else. There had been a third vehicle. A police cruiser. It followed the van. The cruiser belonged to the Red Creek Sheriff's Office. The vehicle number was identified. Unit 14. Assigned that night to Deputy Frank Dalton. Dalton had already admitted seeing Claire. Now investigators had evidence placing his patrol car behind her. He finally confessed. He said Mercer ordered him to follow the van. He said he was told the situation involved stolen company property. He believed Claire had stolen photographs. He followed. When they reached the quarry, Dalton remained outside. He heard shouting. He heard Claire scream. Then he heard a single loud impact. He never went inside. He said he was afraid. But investigators did not believe he was telling everything, because Dalton's patrol car was later recorded leaving the quarry at 2:17 a.m. Not immediately. Not after minutes. More than an hour later. What happened inside during that missing hour? Dalton eventually broke. He admitted he entered the chamber. He saw Claire. She was alive. She was tied to a chair. Crane was there. Voss was there. And another man stood behind them. Dalton said he had never seen him before, but Claire had. She looked directly at him. Then she said his name. Dalton remembered only the first name. Martin. Investigators froze. Martin Hale. The lawyer. The man Claire had trusted. The man who had promised to help her. The man who had been photographed at the quarry. The man whose financial records connected him to Bell Mountain Materials. The man who had died 7 years later in a suspicious crash. Hale had not been the investigator Claire believed he was. He had been inside the operation, and he had known Claire was coming. But there was still one contradiction. Hale was supposed to have been in his office that evening. The secretary remembered seeing him there. Then investigators checked the office security record. There were no cameras, but a neighboring business had an external camera. The footage had survived on old tape. It showed Hale leaving his office at 10:47 p.m. He drove away. His vehicle headed toward the quarry. At 11:39, it passed the Blue Lantern. At 11:52, Claire was photographed. At 12:01, Hale's vehicle stopped behind her. For the first time, the mystery became brutally clear. Claire did not vanish randomly. She had been intercepted. The people she trusted were waiting for her, and the person she believed would protect her had helped lead her into the trap. The final question was no longer where Claire had gone. It was what happened inside the chamber. Dalton's testimony gave investigators part of the answer. Claire had confronted Hale. She demanded her photographs back. Hale told her it was too late. She threatened to expose everyone. Crane became angry. Voss tried to stop him. Then the lights went out. Dalton heard a struggle. He heard Claire scream, then silence. When the lights returned, Claire was on the floor. She was not moving. Hale looked at Voss, then at Crane. He said only one sentence. "Clean this up." That sentence explained the entire night. The van, the loader, the burial, the missing evidence, the false police reports, the decades of silence. But it did not explain why Claire's bracelet had been hidden. It did not explain who had written she fought back. And it did not explain why Voss had kept silent for nearly 30 years, until investigators discovered one final document in the old quarry office, a handwritten agreement, signed by Voss. It stated that if he ever spoke about Claire Morgan, his own family would be harmed. The threat had been written in 1992. At the bottom was a signature. Not Crane, not Mercer, not Hale. The signature belonged to Eleanor Bell, the woman who had insisted she never touched Claire, the woman who had claimed she only wanted the photographs recovered, the woman who had been directing the operation from a distance. Suddenly, the hierarchy was clear. Hale had been the inside man. Crane had handled the physical operation. Voss had carried out orders. Mercer had controlled the police response. And Eleanor Bell had protected the system. But one mystery remained. Who had delivered the final blow? Because the evidence showed Claire was alive when she entered the chamber, and dead before she was buried. Someone had killed her. The answer was hidden in the medical evidence. And when investigators returned to the preserved remains one final time, they found a microscopic fracture that had been overlooked in 1992, a fracture consistent with a heavy blunt object. The object had never been found until now. Inside Eleanor Bell's basement trunk was a photograph of the quarry table. On the table was a metal tool. Beside it was Claire's bracelet. The photograph had been taken after the murder. The tool was still visible, and on its handle was a faint engraving. 3 letters. R.H. Richard Hale. The man who claimed he wanted to protect Claire. The man who had driven her to the quarry. The man who watched her disappear. The man who later died in a crash. The man who had spent the final years of his life carrying a secret nobody was supposed to uncover. The cold case had finally reached its darkest point. Claire Morgan had trusted the wrong person, and that mistake had cost her everything. But investigators still had one final problem. Hale was dead. Crane was dead. Mercer was old. Voss was 70. Eleanor Bell was 81. The people responsible were disappearing one by one. And if prosecutors wanted justice for Claire, they would need to prove what happened without the one man who could no longer stand in a courtroom. The man who had held the weapon. The man who had ordered the cleanup. The man whose silence had lasted until death. The man whose name had remained buried in the cold case file for nearly 3 decades. Richard Hale. The investigation was no longer searching for the killer. It was searching for the truth Hale had left behind, and the answer was hidden somewhere in the final box recovered from his law office. Colorado, 1992. Cold case solved, buried evidence reveals chilling truth. The final box from Richard Hale's law office had been sitting in an evidence warehouse for nearly 3 decades. Nobody knew it existed. Not the original detectives, not the prosecutors, not Claire Morgan's family, not even the attorneys who had reviewed Hale's records after his death. It had been cataloged under the wrong case number and placed among hundreds of abandoned legal files. Inside were 12 folders, 3 bank statements, 2 property deeds, a stack of photographs, and 1 cassette tape marked with a single date, October 11th, 92, the day after Claire Morgan disappeared. Detective Mara Ellison stared at the label for several seconds before placing it beside the recorder. The tape began with silence. Then Hale's voice, low, controlled, almost calm. He was speaking to someone in an office. The second voice was unfamiliar. The recording was damaged, but several words survived. The girl is dead. A pause. Then the evidence? Gone. Another pause. No, not all of it. The second voice became sharper. You were supposed to make sure. Hale answered. I did. The recording ended. Investigators played it again and again. The voice recognition team isolated the second speaker. The result was not conclusive, but the voice had similarities to someone investigators had not considered before, a man named Peter Vale. Vale had been a county commissioner in 1992. He had overseen environmental contracts. He had signed permits connected to Bell Mountain material, and he had been a close political ally of Eleanor Bell. Vale had died in 2014. His public career had been spotless, at least on paper. But the documents inside Hale's box told a different story. Payments had been made to Vale through 3 shell companies. The companies had no employees, no offices, no legitimate business activity. Money entered, money disappeared, and every payment occurred shortly after an environmental complaint was filed. Claire's name appeared in one of the records. The payment date was October 12th, still 1992, 2 days after her murder. The amount was $48,000. The description read, consulting services. There had been no consulting contract. There had been no legitimate work. The money was a payment for silence, and someone had been paid to make sure the official investigation never reached the quarry. Ellison placed the document beside Mercer's old notebook. The names were beginning to overlap. Rourke, Crane, Voss, Hale, Mercer, Eleanor Bell, Peter Vale. The operation had not been a small conspiracy. It had been a system built around money, land, political influence, and fear. But Claire's murder had been different. Claire had not simply discovered the dumping operation. She had discovered the people behind it. She had photographed them. She had names, dates, vehicles, and evidence connecting local officials to the illegal operation. That made her dangerous. The investigation turned back to Claire's apartment. Her mother had preserved almost everything: old letters, receipts, photographs, clothing, a diary. The diary had never been considered important. It contained ordinary entries: work, friends, bills, family. Then investigators found the final pages. Claire had written about the quarrel. She had written about the trucks. She had written about a man who followed her. And on October 9th, she wrote something that changed the entire case. Martin says he can help me. Below it, I don't know if I should trust him. The next line was underlined twice. He knows more than he admits. The entry ended there. Claire had suspected Hale, but she still intended to meet him. That meant Hale had manipulated her trust. Investigators searched Hale's surviving correspondence. They found several letters between Hale and Eleanor Bell. Most were coded, but one contained a sentence that investigators could finally understand. The girl believes Martin is on her side. The date was October 8th, 2 days before Claire died. The implication was devastating. Hale had deliberately positioned himself as Claire's protector. He encouraged her to bring him the evidence. He convinced her that he could help expose the operation. Then he arranged the meeting. But why? Because Hale needed to know exactly what Claire had. If she had copies of the photographs, the network was exposed. If she had only rumors, they could intimidate her. But Claire had more. She had negatives. and investigators now knew where some of those negatives had gone. Not all had been recovered. One roll was missing. The missing roll could contain the image that proved everything. The search became urgent. Investigators revisited every person who had handled Claire's belongings: her family, her co-workers, police officers, the lawyer, the storage facility, the excavation yard. Nothing. Then Patricia Lowell, the former Blue Lantern waitress, remembered something. On the night Claire disappeared, Claire had left a small envelope behind the counter. She had told Patricia not to open it. She said someone would come for it. Patricia assumed Claire meant her, but nobody ever came. Patricia had eventually forgotten the envelope. Then, after the murder, she became afraid. She hid it. For 28 years. The envelope was still in her home. Inside was a roll of undeveloped film, the missing roll. Investigators rushed it to the laboratory. The first frame showed the quarry. The next showed trucks. Then Crane, Voss, Mercer, Hale, Eleanor Bell. But the final photographs were different. They showed a private meeting, a table, documents, cash, and 7 people sitting around it. One of them was Peter Vale. Another was Eleanor Bell. Another was Hale. The others were connected to companies involved in the dumping operation. The final photograph showed a document lying on the table. The image was blurry, but forensic specialists enhanced it. It was a list of payments. At the top was one name, Claire Morgan. Beside it was a number, not a payment, a reference code. The same code appeared in the quarry notebook. It meant something investigators had never understood. Subject 17. Claire was not being treated as an ordinary witness. She was being classified, tracked, monitored. The photograph proved that the people involved had discussed her before her death. They had decided what to do about her. And the meeting had taken place before she vanished. The cold case had finally reached the planning stage. Claire's murder had not been spontaneous. It had been anticipated. Investigators reconstructed the meeting. Eleanor Bell wanted the photographs recovered. Hale was instructed to bring Claire to the quarry. Crane was responsible for the site. Voss was responsible for transportation. Mercer was responsible for the police response. Vale was responsible for political protection. The operation was designed to erase the evidence. But there was one problem. Claire had already hidden a copy, the envelope at the diner. The negative survived. And because they survived, the entire system could now be exposed. The next discovery was even more disturbing. One photograph showed Hale standing beside the quarry table. On the table was a hammer. Investigators compared the shape of the hammer with the injury pattern found in Claire's remains. The dimensions were consistent. But the hammer was not in the storage unit. It was not in Hale's home. It was not in the quarry. It was gone. Then an old evidence photograph surfaced. It had been taken during the 1999 investigation into Hale's fatal crash. Inside his vehicle was a small tool case. One hammer was visible. The photograph had been overlooked because the case was never connected to Claire. Investigators enlarged the image. The hammer had an unusual marking on its handle. 3 letters. RH. The same initials found on the photograph from Eleanor Bell's trunk. Richard Hale had owned the weapon, but investigators needed to establish whether he had used it. Modern forensic examination of the old photograph could not prove that. The weapon itself was gone. Hale was dead. The case seemed to be approaching another dead end. Then the investigators received a call. A former mechanic named Thomas Avery had heard about the investigation. He said he had worked on Hale's vehicle in 1999. Avery remembered the tool case. More importantly, he remembered Hale telling him to remove something from the vehicle. Avery had refused. Hale became angry. He eventually took the tool case himself, but Avery remembered where Hale had parked afterward, behind an old hunting lodge. The lodge had since been demolished, yet its storage shed remained. Investigators obtained permission to search. The shed was filled with rusted equipment, old tires, chains, broken furniture, and beneath a pile of wooden boards was a steel toolbox. The toolbox was locked. Inside was a hammer. The handle was cracked. The metal head was heavily corroded. Forensic specialists tested it. There was no usable DNA, no visible blood, but microscopic traces of biological material remained inside a fracture near the head. The material was too degraded for a complete profile. Then chemical analysis detected something else, industrial residue. the same residue found in the quarry chamber, the same residue found on Claire's remains, the same chemical compound associated with Bell Mountain's dumping operation. It was not definitive proof that the hammer killed Claire, but it placed the weapon in the same environment. And the hammer belonged to Hale. The investigation now had a physical object connecting him to the quarry. The prosecutors faced a major problem. Hale was dead. Crane was dead. Rourke was dead. Vale was dead. Mercer was old and ill. Eleanor Bell was elderly. Voss was the only major participant still capable of facing trial. And Voss had just admitted something investigators had not expected. He agreed to tell the truth. But only once. He requested that the interview be recorded. Ellison sat across from him. The camera began. Voss looked directly into the lens. He did not appear frightened. He appeared exhausted. He said Claire's name. Then he described the night. He admitted following her. He admitted taking her to the quarry. He admitted helping restrain her. He admitted transporting her body. But he denied killing her. He said Hale struck Claire. Once. Then again. He said Claire fell. He said Crane ordered him to check whether she was breathing. She was not. Voss said he panicked. He wanted to call police. Hale threatened him. He said if Voss spoke, his family would disappear. Voss believed him. So he helped bury Claire. He said Mercer arrived later. Mercer did not ask questions. He simply told Voss what to say. Then Voss revealed something else. Claire had spoken to Hale before she died. She told him the photographs were not the only evidence. She had sent copies to someone outside Colorado. Hale did not believe her. That was why they had killed her. They believed destroying the photographs would destroy the threat. They were wrong. Claire had planned ahead. She had mailed evidence to a journalist. The package had never arrived. Or at least, that was what investigators thought. They searched newspaper archives. One journalist had received an anonymous package in October 1992. His name was Stephen Marsh. He had been investigating environmental corruption. The package contained photographs, but he had assumed they were unrelated. He had stored them in a filing cabinet. Then he retired. The photographs remained in his garage. Marsh was alive. When investigators visited him, he opened an old cabinet. Inside was a brown envelope. On the front were 3 words, from Claire Morgan. The photographs were the missing evidence, but one image mattered most. It showed the inside of the quarry chamber, a table, a chair, the hammer, and behind the table, carved into the wall, were initials, RH. Claire had photographed the room before her death. She had already discovered Hale's connection. She had known. And that meant Hale had not merely killed her to recover evidence. He had killed her because she had discovered his identity. The final mystery was Eleanor Bell. Did she order the murder? Voss said she did not physically participate, but he claimed she gave the instruction. Recover the evidence. Silence Claire if necessary. He said Hale interpreted the order as permission to kill. Eleanor Bell denied it. But her own notebook contained the instruction, and her letters showed that she knew Claire was being taken to the quarry. The prosecution now had enough evidence to charge Voss with murder and kidnapping. But investigators wanted more. They wanted the entire network exposed. They wanted the missing women identified. They wanted the families to know what had happened. And they wanted to know whether the quarry contained more victims. Ground penetrating scans were expanded across the property. 3 additional anomalies appeared. The first contained barrels. The second contained old equipment. The third appeared to be a grave. Investigators marked the coordinates. The excavation began slowly, layer by layer. Soil, rock, roots, then bone. Human bone. The investigators stopped. Another victim had been buried beneath the same mountain. But this time, there was something beside the remains. A small necklace, a photograph, and a piece of paper protected inside plastic. The paper contained a name, Melissa Grant, the woman who disappeared in 1988. The first case investigators had connected to the quarry. The mountain had finally given her back. But Melissa was not alone. The excavation continued. More remains were discovered nearby. 2 sets. Then another. For graves. For women. For cold cases. For families who had spent decades waiting for answers. The investigators stood silently as the evidence was removed from the earth. Claire had not been the only victim. She had been the victim who finally exposed the system. The case that began with a hand beneath Colorado soil had become something much larger. A hidden network, a false identity, a corrupt investigation, a lawyer who betrayed his client, a police officer who buried evidence, a contractor who controlled the quarry, a mechanic who followed orders, and a woman who had inherited an empire built on silence. But the most haunting discovery came last. Inside the fourth grave was a woman's shoe, the same brand, the same size, the same style described in the missing person report of a woman who vanished in 1989. Her family had spent 37 years believing she had simply disappeared. Now the mountain had finally answered, and Claire's cold case had become the doorway to a much darker truth. The evidence was no longer buried. The names were no longer forgotten. The secrets were finally visible. But investigators still had one final question. How many people had known? Because if a network this large had survived for decades, then someone had protected it long after the original men were gone. And when investigators followed the money beyond Eleanor Bell, they discovered a final account. It had remained active until 2018, 26 years after Claire's murder. Someone had still been paying for silence. Someone had still been watching the family. Someone had still been protecting the secret. And the name attached to that account was not Eleanor Bell. It was a name nobody expected to see. A name connected to the original cold case investigation itself. A name that appeared on the first page of Claire Morgan's file. The name of the detective who had originally declared the quarry irrelevant.